For 2.5 years, I paid Busara 30,000 baht every month to stay home. She was still going to work in Soi Cowboy 4 nights a week. I was just too in love to see it. I know what you're thinking. 73-year-old American man, 27-year-old Thai woman, money changing hands every month. I'm the cliché you warn your friends about. I'm the cautionary tale expats tell newcomers over cheap beer and sukhumvit. But when you're living it, when you're the one feeling what I felt, none of that matters. You think your situation is different. You think your love is special. You think she sees something in you that makes all the age and cultural differences disappear. I was wrong about all of it. My name is Douglas Freeman. I'm a retired accountant from Phoenix, Arizona. I moved to Bangkok in January 2022 after my wife of 42 years passed away from cancer. The house felt too big without her. The silence was suffocating. My kids suggested I travel, see the world, get out of my own head. A friend from my golf club had been spending winters in Thailand for years. He made it sound like paradise. Warm weather, low cost of living, friendly people. I booked a one-way ticket 3 months after Susan's funeral. I met Busara in March 2022. I'd been in Bangkok for 2 months, mostly keeping to myself, taking Thai language classes, exploring temples, eating street food. I wasn't looking for a bar girl. I wasn't looking for anyone, really. But one night, some expats I'd met at a coffee shop insisted I join them for drinks. They took me to Soi Cowboy. I told them I wasn't interested in that scene, but they laughed it off. Just one drink, they said. Just see what it's like. That's where I saw her. Busara. She wasn't dancing on the pole like the other girls. She was sitting at the bar, talking to the mama-san, looking bored. She had this refined quality about her, like she didn't quite belong there. When I walked past to use the restroom, she smiled at me. Not the aggressive, performative smile the working girls give every farang who walks through the door. This was different, shy, almost apologetic. I stopped and said hello in my broken Thai. She laughed, told me in decent English that my pronunciation was terrible. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. She told me she was from Nakhon Ratchasima originally, that she'd moved to Bangkok 3 years earlier to support her family back home. Her father was sick. Her mother couldn't work. She had 2 younger brothers still in school. The story wasn't unique, I know that now, but the way she told it felt genuine. There was no hard sell. She didn't ask me to buy her a drink. She didn't suggest I take her out of the bar. When my friend said it was time to go, I asked if I could see her again. She wrote her line ID on a napkin and told me to message her. I messaged her the next day. We met for lunch at a small restaurant near Victory Monument, nowhere near Soi Cowboy. We talked for 3 hours. She asked about my life, seemed genuinely interested in my answers. When I told her about losing Susan, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I hadn't felt that kind of warmth from another person in months. By the end of lunch, I knew I wanted to see her again. Over the next few weeks, we met regularly. Coffee, walks in Lumpini Park, dinner at street food stalls. She never mentioned work. I didn't ask. I knew what she did, of course, but I convinced myself it didn't matter. She wasn't like that when she was with me. With me, she was sweet and thoughtful. She remembered small details about things I'd said. She laughed at my terrible jokes. She made me feel alive again in a way I hadn't since before Susan got sick. After about 6 weeks, I told her I didn't want her working in the bar anymore. I said I'd take care of her financially if she quit. 30,000 baht a month, roughly $900, enough to cover her rent, send money home to her family, and have some left over for herself. She cried when I offered. She said no man had ever been so kind to her. She said she'd been praying for a way out of that life, and I was her answer. She quit the next week, or so she told me. For the first few months, everything felt perfect. She moved into a small apartment in On Nut, not far from my place in Phra Kanong. We saw each other almost every day. I'd cook breakfast for us, terrible American attempts at Thai food that made her laugh. She'd teach me more Thai words. We'd watch movies at night, her head on my shoulder. The physical side of our relationship developed naturally. I won't pretend that wasn't important to me. At 73, I didn't expect to feel desire again, but with Busara, I did. She made me feel younger, needed, relevant. I knew people judged us. The looks we got when we walked together in shopping malls, the smirks from other expats who assumed they knew exactly what our relationship was. But I didn't care. I'd spent 42 years in a good, stable, loving marriage. I knew what real connection felt like. What I had with Busara felt real too, just different. Age gap relationships happen. Not everyone understands them, but that doesn't make them invalid. I sent 30,000 baht to her bank account on the first of every month, like clockwork. She always thanked me, told me how much it meant to her family that she could help them. She showed me photos of her brothers in their school uniforms, receipts from money transfers back to Nakhon Ratchasima. Everything seemed transparent. Everything seemed right. The changes started around October 2023, maybe 6 or 7 months into our relationship. Small things at first, nothing I could point to as definitive evidence of anything wrong, just shifts in pattern that didn't quite add up. She started keeping her phone face down all the time. Before, she'd leave it on the table when we had dinner, screen visible, no password. Suddenly it had a 6-digit passcode and was always turned over. When I asked about it casually, she said she'd been getting spam calls and didn't want to be disturbed during our time together. That made sense. I let it go. She became less available. Before, if I suggested we meet for lunch, she'd usually say yes. Now there were more days when she was busy, visiting friends in other parts of Bangkok, helping her aunt with something, meeting with someone from her village who was in town. The excuses were always vague but plausible. I told myself I was being unreasonable. She was 27 years old. She needed a social life beyond just me. I didn't own her time. Her appearance changed. She started dressing nicer when she went out, even for casual errands, new clothes I hadn't seen before. When I asked where she got them, she said she'd bought them at Platinum Mall or saved up from the allowance I gave her. She started wearing more makeup, doing her hair differently. I should have been flattered, thinking maybe she was making an effort for me, but something about it felt off, like she was preparing for someone else's attention. The sex changed too. We'd never had a wildly passionate relationship, but there'd been genuine affection and intimacy. Now she seemed distracted during intimate moments, like her mind was somewhere else. She'd check her phone immediately after, something she never used to do. The frequency decreased. Once or twice a week became once every 2 weeks, then once a month. When I asked if something was wrong, if I'd done something to upset her, she said she was just tired, stressed about her father's health. I believed her, because I wanted to believe her. There were specific incidents that should have made me investigate sooner. One afternoon in November, I stopped by her apartment unannounced with groceries. She answered the door in a robe, hair wet, said she'd just gotten out of the shower, but her shower wasn't running and her bathroom mirror wasn't fogged. She said she'd been finished for 10 minutes already. I accepted the explanation. What else was I going to do? Accuse her of lying about a shower? Another time, I found an expensive bottle of perfume in her bathroom that I hadn't bought her. When I mentioned it, she said a friend had given it to her for her birthday. Her birthday had been 4 months earlier. She got defensive when I pushed gently, asked why I was interrogating her. I apologized. I didn't want to be the jealous, controlling older boyfriend. I started noticing she had more money than 30,000 baht a month should allow. New phone, new shoes, dinners out with friends that she'd pay for. She explained it away as gifts from relatives, lucky gambling wins, good deals she'd found. I'm an accountant by training. Numbers are supposed to be my thing. But I didn't add these up because I didn't want the answer they'd give me. My left hand developed a tremor around this time. Just my hand, nothing else. It would shake when I held a coffee cup or tried to write something. I thought it was age, maybe early Parkinson's. My doctor ran tests. Everything came back normal. He suggested stress. I told him I wasn't stressed. I was retired and in a happy relationship. Why would I be stressed? In December, Busara started having more evening commitments. She'd apologize, say she had to attend a wedding for a cousin, or her friends were having a goodbye party for someone moving back to Isan, or her aunt needed help with something that could only be done at night. She'd leave around 7 p.m. and come home around 2 or 3 in the morning. The first few times, I told myself Thai people have different social schedules. Big family cultures mean lots of obligations. But every week? Sometimes twice a week? I asked to meet her friends. She said they were shy around farangs, that they'd feel uncomfortable. I asked to come to one of these family events. She said it wouldn't be appropriate, that her family was traditional and bringing a foreign boyfriend to a gathering would cause questions she wasn't ready to answer yet. Every barrier made sense individually. Collectively, they formed a wall. One night in January 2024, I called her at 11 p.m. I'd been thinking about her, wanted to hear her voice before bed. She didn't answer. I called again at 11:30. No answer. I told myself her phone was on silent. She was busy with whatever event she was at. She called me back at 2:15 in the morning. Apologized profusely, said she'd left her phone in her purse and hadn't heard it ring. In the background I could hear music, not traditional Thai music like you'd hear at a family gathering. Club music. Western pop songs. When I mentioned it, she said her friend had put music on at the party. I said it sounded like a bar. She got quiet, then said I was right. They'd gone to a bar after the dinner finished, just to dance, she said. Nothing wrong with that. I asked which bar. She said she couldn't remember the name. A friend had chosen it. I let it go, but I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the air conditioner hum, that tremor in my left hand getting worse. An expat friend, Andrew, saw her in February. He didn't tell me immediately. He waited almost 3 weeks before bringing it up. We were having coffee at a place in Thonglo when he cleared his throat awkwardly and said there was something he needed to tell me but didn't want to upset me. My stomach dropped before he even started explaining. He'd been in Soi Cowboy with some visiting friends from the UK, showing them the nightlife scene. He saw Busara sitting at a table with a tall, blonde man. Western guy, probably Scandinavian based on his looks. They were close, intimate. The man had his arm around her shoulders. She was laughing, leaning into him. Andrew said at first he thought maybe she had a sister or cousin who looked similar, but then she turned and he saw her face clearly. It was definitely Busara. I got defensive immediately. Told Andrew he was mistaken. Busara didn't go to Soi Cowboy anymore. She'd quit working there. He must have seen someone who looked like her. Andrew backpedaled, said maybe he was wrong. It was dark in those bars, easy to confuse people. But his face told me he wasn't wrong. He knew what he'd seen. I didn't confront Busara about it. I told myself Andrew had made an honest mistake. Bangkok has millions of people. Coincidences happen. But the seed was planted. I started paying closer attention. In March, I came home early from a doctor's appointment that got rescheduled. I decided to surprise Busara, stop by her apartment with lunch. When I got there, she wasn't home. I called her. She said she was at the market near her place, buying vegetables. I walked to the market. She wasn't there. I called again. She said she'd just left, was walking home. I went back to her apartment. She arrived 20 minutes later, empty-handed. I asked where the vegetables were. She said the vendor didn't have what she wanted, so she didn't buy anything. The explanation was possible. But combined with everything else, it felt hollow. I started checking her social media more obsessively. She didn't post much, but when she did, I'd zoom in on every detail. Background locations trying to figure out where she'd been. Clothes trying to remember if I'd seen them before. Comments from people I didn't recognize. One photo from late March showed her at a nice restaurant I'd never been to. The caption said she was out with friends, but the angle of the photo suggested someone sitting across from her had taken it. Someone who knew how to frame her face well. Someone who cared how she looked in the image. I wanted to ask her about it. I drafted messages and deleted them. I didn't want to be that boyfriend. The suspicious, paranoid one who ruins a good thing by being unable to trust. Susan never gave me reason to doubt her in 42 years. Maybe the problem wasn't Busara. Maybe the problem was me bringing baggage from my old life into this new one. My doctor increased my blood pressure medication in April. The stress I claimed not to have was showing up in my body's numbers. I wasn't sleeping well. I'd wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and check my phone to see if Busara had messaged me. If she hadn't, I'd worry. If she had, I'd read into every word choice, looking for inconsistencies. I lost 12 pounds between February and May. Not from exercise or diet changes, just from constant low-level anxiety that killed my appetite. I'd order food and push it around my plate, unable to eat more than a few bites. I was eating alone more often because Busara was busy more often. When we did have dinner together, she'd be on her phone more than she used to be, typing messages with a slight smile that didn't include me. In late May, I decided I needed to know the truth. I couldn't keep living in this fog of suspicion. I made a choice that I'm not proud of. One evening when Busara came over to my apartment, she took a shower. While she was in the bathroom, I picked up her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. It was locked. 6-digit passcode. I tried her birthday. Wrong. I tried my birthday. Wrong. I tried the date we'd met. Wrong. After 3 attempts, the phone warned me it would lock permanently if I tried again. I set it down carefully where I'd found it and sat on the edge of my bed, feeling like a criminal. When she came out of the bathroom, I watched her pick up her phone and check it immediately like a reflex. She glanced at the screen, and her expression changed for just a second. Something between concern and relief. Then she saw me watching and smiled. "What?" she asked. I told her nothing. I'd just missed her face. She laughed and kissed my forehead like I was a sweet old man saying cute things. I felt pathetic. The truth came out by accident. That's what haunts me most. If her friend hadn't gotten drunk and careless, I might still be paying Busara 30,000 baht a month while she worked in Soi Cowboy 5 nights a week. It was June 8th, 2024. I remember the date because I was eating mango sticky rice when it happened. And now I can't eat mango sticky rice without my stomach turning. I was at a small restaurant near Nana Station, alone, reading a book. A Thai woman approached my table, mid-30s, heavily made up in a style that marked her as working in the bar scene. She asked in English if I was Douglas. I said yes, confused. She sat down without being invited. Her name was Fawn. She was one of Busara's friends from Soi Cowboy. She'd been drinking. I could smell it on her breath. She said she felt bad for me. She'd been watching me and Busara together a few times and she couldn't stand it anymore. She needed to tell me the truth because she had a farang boyfriend too, and she'd want someone to tell him if she was doing what Busara was doing. I asked what she meant. My voice sounded far away, like I was hearing myself through water. Fawn told me Busara never quit working at the bar. She told her mama-san she was cutting back because she had a boyfriend supporting her, but she still came in 4 or 5 nights a week. Sometimes more during high season when tourists were plentiful. She had regular customers, men who'd pay her bar fine and take her out. One of them was a Swedish man who came to Bangkok every few months for business. He'd been seeing Busara for over a year, even before she met me. He didn't know about me either. I sat there with that mango sticky rice in front of me, going cold, while Fawn told me details I didn't want to hear but couldn't stop listening to. How Busara would tell me she was at family events but she was actually working. How she'd laugh with the other girls about having 2 farangs giving her money, doubling her income. How the Swedish man had bought her the new phone I'd seen. How she'd been planning to go to Sweden with him next year if he got serious enough. I asked why Fawn was telling me this. She said because it wasn't fair. Because I seemed like a nice man and Busara was taking advantage. Because she was drunk enough to have courage but would regret it tomorrow. She left after that, wouldn't give me her contact information. Said she'd already said too much. I sat in that restaurant for another hour, unable to move. The owner asked twice if I was okay. I said I was fine. I wasn't fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. I didn't confront Busara immediately. I know that sounds weak, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Part of me still hoped Fawn was lying, maybe out of jealousy or some personal vendetta. I decided to verify first. I needed proof before I destroyed everything. The next evening, when Busara told me she was going to help her aunt with something, I followed her. I took a taxi to a spot near her apartment and waited. She left around 7:30 p.m., dressed nicely, makeup done carefully. She didn't head toward her aunt's place in Bangkok. She went toward Sukhumvit, toward Nana, toward Soi Cowboy. I followed at a distance. I felt ridiculous. A 73-year-old man playing detective in a foreign country, but I had to know. She walked confidently down the Soi, nodded at security guards who clearly knew her, and entered a bar called the Dollhouse, the same bar where I'd met her 2.5 years earlier. I stood outside for 15 minutes, trying to decide what to do. I could walk in, confront her publicly, make a scene. I could leave and pretend I hadn't seen anything. I could go inside quietly and just watch, see if Fawn had told the truth. I went inside. The bar was dark, loud music playing, girls in bikinis dancing on poles and stages. I saw Busara at a table with 3 Western men. She was laughing, touching one man's arm, the same way she used to touch mine when we first met. One of the men was blonde, tall, fit, Scandinavian features. That must be the Swedish man Fawn mentioned. Busara glanced toward the entrance and saw me. For a moment, our eyes met across the bar. I watched her face change as she registered who I was and what it meant that I was there. The smile dropped. Her skin went pale even under the bar's pink lights. She said something to the men and stood up. I turned and walked out before she could reach me. I couldn't breathe inside that bar. The smell of cigarette smoke and cheap perfume, the pounding music, the girls pretending to be attracted to men old enough to be their grandfathers, it all felt like suffocation. I made it halfway down the Soi before she caught up with me. She grabbed my arm, started talking fast in Thai and English mixed together. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain. Please let me explain." I asked her how long. She said, "What do you mean?" I asked how long had she been working while telling me she'd quit. She said she'd only started again recently, last month, because her father needed an operation and 30,000 baht wasn't enough. I asked about the Swedish man. She went quiet. That silence told me everything. She tried a different approach. Got angry. Asked why I was following her. Why I didn't trust her. Whether I thought I owned her just because I gave her money. She said she was a grown woman who could make her own choices about her life and her work. She said if I really loved her, I'd understand that she needed to do what was best for her family. I asked if any of it had been real. She didn't answer. That told me everything too. I walked away. She called after me, said we needed to talk properly, but I kept walking until I found a taxi. I went home and sat in my apartment in the dark for hours. That tremor in my left hand was so bad I had to sit on my hand to make it stop. Over the next week, I started putting together the full timeline. I checked my bank records, cross-referenced dates. I'd sent her money with dates I knew she'd been busy or with family. The pattern was obvious once I looked for it. Every time she'd canceled plans or been unavailable, every time she'd come back to my apartment at 2 or 3 in the morning smelling like cigarettes and making excuses, she'd been working. Not sometimes, not occasionally, consistently, the entire time. She'd been working in the bar the whole 2.5 years. She'd never quit. She'd just reduced her schedule enough to make time for me between customers. I was her side project, her supplementary income, her insurance policy. The Swedish man had been in the picture the whole time too, before me even. While she was telling me I was special and different, she was telling him the same thing. We were both paying her, both thinking we were saving her, both believing her tears and her stories about sick family members. Some of it might have been true. Her father might really be sick. Her family might really need money. But that didn't change the fact that every word out of her mouth had been calculated to extract maximum financial and emotional investment from me. I found her dating app profiles in mid-June while searching her name online. Multiple profiles across different platforms, all active, all with recent photos. Some listed her as single. Others said she was looking for serious relationships. One said she was seeking a travel partner to explore Europe. I hadn't just been played. I'd been one player in a larger game I didn't even know I was participating in. Busara tried to contact me multiple times in the weeks after I caught her. Phone calls I didn't answer. Line messages I didn't read. She showed up at my apartment twice. I didn't let her in. The second time she cried outside my door for 20 minutes, saying she was sorry, saying she did love me, saying she'd made mistakes but we could fix this. I stood on the other side of that door listening to her performance and feeling nothing. The third time she tried to see me, she brought the Swedish man with her. I don't know what she was thinking. Maybe she wanted to prove something to him, or to me, or to herself. I opened the door, saw them both standing there, and started laughing. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation hit me all at once. Two old foreign men, both thinking we were special, both standing in the same doorway looking at each other with the same expression of confused betrayal. The Swedish man didn't know about me either. That became clear quickly. He looked at me, looked at Busara, and said something in Swedish I didn't understand but whose meaning was obvious from his tone. He left. I closed the door. I haven't seen or heard from either of them since. I haven't told anyone this story until now. Not my kids, who call every few weeks to check on me. Not my expat friends, who ask occasionally how things are going with my girlfriend. Not my doctor, who's pleased my blood pressure has stabilized and my tremor has resolved. I'm embarrassed. That's the truth of it. I'm 73 years old enough to know better, experienced enough to recognize a con, yet I fell for it completely. I let myself believe a beautiful 27-year-old woman wanted to be with me for reasons beyond financial security. I ignored every red flag because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging I was just another old farang in a bar girl's roster. Some nights I lie awake wondering if any of it was real. Did she feel anything for me at all, even briefly? Or was every smile, every touch, every moment of apparent tenderness just professional performance? I'll never know. That's worse than the financial loss or the betrayal itself. The not knowing, the questioning everything, the realization that I can't trust my own judgment about something as fundamental as whether another person cared about me. I still see her sometimes. Bangkok is a big city, but certain areas overlap. I'll be at a restaurant in Sukhumvit and see her walking past with a different foreign man. Always someone new. She sees me too. We don't acknowledge each other. There's nothing to say. I'm still in Bangkok. Moving back to the States would feel like admitting defeat, like letting her win. I've joined a book club, started taking cooking classes, made friends with expats who aren't involved in the bar scene. I'm building a life that has nothing to do with young Thai women or romantic delusions. The 30,000 baht I was sending her every month now goes to a local charity that helps street children. I figured if I'm going to give money away, it might as well go somewhere it's actually needed. The charity sends me updates sometimes, photos of kids getting meals and education. That feels more real than anything with Busara ever did. I still think about her, though, not with longing or anger, just with a kind of sad curiosity. What's she doing now? Did the Swedish man take her back? Has she found other sponsors? Is she still working in the same bar, telling the same stories to the same kind of naive men who want to believe they're different? The hardest part is accepting my own role in it. I wasn't an innocent victim. I chose to ignore warning signs because ignoring them was more comfortable than investigating. I chose to believe her excuses because the alternative was too painful. I chose to think with my heart and my ego instead of my head. Those were my choices. She didn't force them on me. Looking back now, I can see exactly when things started shifting. That password on her phone in October 2023, that was the moment. If I'd pressed harder then, if I'd trusted my instincts instead of talking myself out of them, I could have saved myself 18 months of being played. But I wanted the fantasy more than I wanted the truth. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes after losing a spouse of 4 decades. You don't just miss the person, you miss having a person. You miss mattering to someone. You miss being needed and wanted and chosen. That loneliness made me vulnerable in ways I didn't recognize until too late. Busara didn't create that vulnerability. She just exploited it. I don't hate her. That surprises me sometimes. I thought I would. I thought I'd be consumed by rage or desire for revenge. But mostly I just feel tired. Tired of analyzing it. Tired of replaying conversations and looking for the moments where I could have seen the truth. Tired of feeling stupid. If you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, older man, younger Thai woman, money involved, things that don't quite add up, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Maybe your situation is different. Maybe your girlfriend really did quit the bar. Maybe the love is real and the age gap doesn't matter and everything will work out fine. But if her phone suddenly has a password it didn't have before, pay attention. If she's busy more evenings than she used to be, pay attention. If her friends won't meet you, and her family keeps being not ready to know about you, pay attention. If money doesn't add up, if stories have inconsistencies, if your gut is telling you something is wrong, pay attention. Don't be like me. Don't waste 2.5 years convincing yourself that wanting something to be true makes it true. Don't pay someone to quit a job they never actually quit. Don't ignore your friends when they try to warn you. Don't let embarrassment keep you from investigating legitimate suspicions. I paid Busara 75,000 baht total over those 2.5 years, about $22,000. That's not counting dinners, gifts, trips, and the countless small expenses that add up over time. I probably spent $30,000 on her. She was making that much from me while also making money from the Swedish man, while also making money from her regular bar customers, while also maintaining active dating profiles looking for the next source of income. She was never my girlfriend. I was her business model. The smartest thing she did was make me believe I was different, that I was special, that our connection transcended the transactional nature of how we met. Every man wants to believe he's the exception. That's what she counted on. That's what made it work. It worked on me for 2.5 years. It could work on you too, if you let it. I'm telling this story not because I want sympathy or because I think I'm special in my suffering. I'm telling it because somewhere out there is another man my age, maybe younger, maybe older, who's ignoring the same signs I ignored, who's convincing himself everything is fine because confronting the truth is too painful, who's paying monthly allowances to a girlfriend who's still working in the bars, or still seeing other men, or still maintaining a whole separate life he doesn't know about. If that's you, you already know the truth. You've known for a while. You're just waiting for permission to admit it to yourself. This is your permission. Check her phone. Follow her one night. Ask her friends uncomfortable questions. Hire a private investigator if you need to. Do whatever it takes to get the truth, because living with the lie will destroy you more slowly but just as completely as the truth will. And when you find out, not if, but when, don't do what I did. Don't stay silent out of embarrassment. Don't protect her reputation by hiding your own humiliation. Tell people. Warn others. Break the cycle of shame that keeps men trapped in these situations. I'm 73 years old. I don't have decades left to recover from mistakes like this, but you might. Don't waste time the way I did. Don't give years of your life to someone who's selling you a fantasy while living a completely different reality. The last time I saw Busara was 3 months ago, September, right before the rainy season started. I was having coffee at a place in Siam. She walked past the window with a much older man, had to be in his 80s, using a cane. She looked happy. She always looks happy. That's her gift, making men feel like they're the center of her world while her world includes 5 other men who all think the same thing. I watched her walk past and I didn't feel anything. No anger, no longing, no regret, just a kind of hollow acceptance. She's going to do what she does. Men are going to believe what they need to believe. The same story will play out 1,000 times in bars across Bangkok and Pattaya and Phuket, with different names and faces but identical patterns. I can't change any of that. All I can do is tell my story and hope it helps someone avoid making the same mistakes I made. So here it is, the full truth. The pathetic, embarrassing, entirely predictable story of an old man who thought he could buy companionship and got exactly what he paid for a performance that ended the moment he stopped paying for it. She never quit the bar. She was never going to quit. The whole premise of our relationship was a lie I paid her to tell me because I needed to believe it was true. That's it. That's the story. I've got nothing else to say about it. Except this. That tremor in my left hand is gone now. Completely gone. Has been since the day I stopped seeing her. My doctor was right. It was stress all along. The stress of knowing something was wrong and choosing not to see it. The stress of maintaining a delusion. The stress of loving someone who was never really there. Now I know the truth, and my hand doesn't shake anymore. I guess that's something.